Welcome, 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 and welcome. Thank you so much for taking your time, your precious time to join me. Thank you. Thank you. Now, let's dive into it. Today, we're going to talk about carbohydrate, the sugars that feed us. Yes, carbohydrate, they are the sugars that feed us. The last lesson we did, we spoke about what? Nutrients and the 6 classes of nutrients. Remember, I will encourage you to go back and watch that video. But today, our main focus is our carbohydrate. Are carbohydrate really bad for us? Most people will tell you to say, oh, carbohydrates are really bad for us. Is that really true? That's the question we're going to ask ourselves. What are the rules? What role does carbohydrate play in terms of what? Keeping us alive. Because remember the title of this lesson today. Carbohydrate, they are the sugars that feed us. Okay, let's go and do it. Let's do it. The very first thing I really want you to know, carbohydrates are very important to your health. Yes, carbohydrates are very important to your health. Most people will mix these two things together. They will say carbohydrates are bad for you. That's not true. Bad carbohydrates are bad for you. How are carbohydrates important to your health? One, they provide us energy. Most people don't really realize it. Carbohydrate, at the end of the day, most of the time when we eat carbohydrate, for example, if you eat a piece of bread, it comes in a very complex form of what? Carbohydrate. When you chew and you swallow, what happens? That bread have to be broken down to what? Glucose, yes. So most of the complex carbohydrate that we eat, our digestive system, that's why we have the digestive system. The whole point of the digestive system is to do one thing, is to break down that complex carbohydrate into what we call what? Simple sugar, such as what? Glucose. Our cells going to use what? Take that glucose and they're going to use that glucose to make what we call what? ATP. Yes, the cell need oxygen and other things to make ATP, right? Well, to be honest here, your cell only need two things. It need glucose and what? Oxygen to make ATP. That's a whole different lesson. But for now, you have to remember, anytime you eat complex carbohydrate, like bread, like pasta, rice, these are all complex carbohydrate. Your body, your digestive tract have to what? Break down that complex carbohydrates into what? Simple sugars, such as what? Glucose. And your cells going to take up that glucose and end up making what? What we call ATP. ATP is very important. Yes, ATP is the energy currency of the human body. We cannot live without ATP. The difference between us and people who are what? Who have passed on is because our body is still have the capacity to produce what? ATP. Because every single cells in your body, every single cells require that energy called what? ATP to carry its function. So without ATP, there is no life. That's correct. Without ATP, there is no life. So how are people saying carbohydrates are not essential to us? But we know we need carbohydrate because carbohydrate, when you break it down, its simplest form is what? Glucose is one of them. And the cell's going to what? Uptake the glucose and end up making what we call what? ATP. We know ATP is essential. ATP, every single cell in your body, this is really important. Every single cells in your body, for it to perform its function, to keep you alive and to keep me alive, it needs what? ATP. And for the cell to make ATP, it needs glucose. How does the cell get its glucose? The cell requires you to consume glucose, right? And most of the time we consume glucose in its what? Complex form, in carbohydrate, like in bread, pastas, and what? And rice. Our digestive tract will break it down for us. So it's what? Simplest form called what? Glucose. And our cells going to uptake that glucose and do what? And make ATP. Without ATP, there is no cellular activities. That literally means to say there is no life. Okay, remember, providing energy is only one function when it comes to our carbohydrate. Carbohydrates are also very important when it comes to what? Protecting us from what? Diseases. Yes, carbohydrate will protect you from being what? Obese. Obesity. Carbohydrate will protect you from having what? Type 2 diabetic. Carbohydrate will protect you from having what? Cardiovascular diseases. Especially what? Whole grains and dietary fibers. These are carbohydrates. Yes, fibers is what? Carbohydrate. I'm going to make a video on that one too. Because most people are not meeting their daily recommended requirements when it comes to what? Dietary what? Fibers. Anytime you eat whole grains, anytime you eat food that is very high in dietary what? Fibers, it reduces your risk of having what? Cardiovascular diseases. It reduces your risk of becoming what? Obese. It reduces your risk of having what? Type 2 diabetic. Dr. C said, the next question we're going to ask ourselves, Dr. C said, how can I make sure I meet my requirements when it comes to what? My daily requirements of dietary fibers and whole grains. We're going to talk about that. But for now, and these days it's very easy. I will highly recommend, now you know to say that carbohydrate, such as like whole grains and what? Dietary fibers, help to reduce your risk of having what? Cardiovascular diseases, obesity, and type 2 diabetic. Use your smartphone. I want to really encourage you. Use your smartphone to do what? Use your smartphone to go ahead and look it up. Look it up and say, what are whole grain food? Which food out there that what? That very high in dietary what? Fibers. Look it up, and I encourage you to make sure what? You consume this food in day-to-day diet, because they do reduce your risk of what? Cardiovascular diseases, obesity, and type 2 diabetic. I'm not going to get into detail because right now our main focus is what? Carbohydrates are what? Very, very vital to your health. They protect you against what? Diseases, just like we just previously discussed. They also provide what? Energy for you, right? Carbohydrates provide energy which every single cells in your body require to perform what? Its cellular function to keep you alive and to keep me alive. The question is, what else does what carbohydrate does for us? Yes, carbohydrates help to what? Control our weight. If you eat, study have shown to say, if you eat plenty of fruit, vegetables, whole grains, it will make you feel full on few calories. What does that mean, Dr. Cece? If you eat a whole bunch of like fruits, vegetables, and whole grains, or let's say if you eat 1 cup of what? Fruit, vegetables, and whole grains, and you eat 1 cup of what? Fast food out there. I'm not going to mention name, but fast food out there. Which one do you think have more calories? Obviously, the 1 cup of what? Fast food. And you also have to remember, most of the time, fast food have been what? Refined. They have been processed. It means to say they have removed all of what? The nutrient from what? From that food, fast food that you're consuming. But if you eat food that is very high in what? Fruit, vegetables, and whole grains, you're not only going to consume less calories, but you're also going to have the benefits of what? Minerals, vitamins, and all the nutrients that these fruit, vegetables, and whole grains have. Fast food, they have processed and removed all of what? The benefit that food has. So by eating fruit and vegetables and whole grains, it will make you to eat few calories that will help you to control weight gain. Most people say, oh, eat low diets, right? Contrary to low diets, right? Low diet carb, because there's a whole thing going on to say, oh, you need to eat low diet carbs. It's the type of carbohydrate that you eat. If you eat fast food carbohydrate, your calorie intake is going to be very high, and what? Most of the time it has been refined. Guess what? You're not gaining the benefits of what? Other nutrients that comes with what? You eating food plenty in what? Fruit, vegetables, and whole grains. Okay, so this is a picture. This is a picture here. It's a little bit complex, but just follow me for a minute, okay? So, but the most important thing here I really want you to pay attention to is this. Anytime, as I was saying earlier on, anytime you eat complex carbohydrate like rice, pasta, bread, for example, what happened? We put it in our mouth, we chew, we swallow. What happened? It end up what? In our digestive tract. When it gets there, it needs to be broken down to its simplest form called what? Glucose. If you look at the top of this picture, you can see right here glucose, right? So glucose going to keep, the body going to keep breaking down what? That glucose. And what I really want you to look here is the glucose at the top, and I want you to go all the way and look at here where it says ATP. Because at the end of the day, that's what you're going to get. That's what you're going to get. You eat those complex what? Carbohydrate, your body going to break it down to the simplest form of called what? Glucose. And guess what? Your body going to use that to make what? ATP. ATP, which is what? The energy currency of human beings. Yes, us human, we need ATP because every single cellular activities in our body require ATP to perform what? Its job. That means to what? To keep us alive. Good. So this is another picture here that I want you to see, right? So as I was telling you, in the digestive tract, every single thing we eat, especially when it comes to our complex carbohydrate, when you eat lipids, when you eat proteins, right? These are all complex molecules. That's why they call them what? Macromolecules. Macromolecules. That's why they call them. They're very complex. Your digestive tract have to break them down. But remember, today our main focus here is what? Is carbohydrate. So if you look at this picture right here, when sugar, starch, which we come in the form, most of the time we eat them in the form of what? Rice, carbohydrate, rice, bread, and what? And rice, bread, and pasta, so on and so forth, right? So what happened? Your body needs to what? Break them down all the way to what? Their simplest form called what? Glucose. That glucose is going to be absorbed into the bloodstream. That's what they're showing here. When it get absorbed into the bloodstream, your cells going to what? Go ahead and pick that glucose up from what? From your capillaries, and it will pick it up, and after that it will use it to what? To make what we call what? ATP. Here they're showing you for proteins, right? Amino acid, and here they're showing you fatty acid for lipids. But today our main focus is what? Carbohydrate, right? Carbohydrate, at the end of the day, one of the simplest form of carbohydrates is glucose, and that glucose is going to end up absorbed into what? The bloodstream through what? The small intestine, right? From the small intestine, what do you think happened? It gets into the bloodstream. From the bloodstream, your cells going to what? Pick it up. When your cell pick it up, what do you think happened? It's going to use it to make it ATP, because it requires what? ATP, which is the energy currency of humans, to do what? To perform its what? Cellular function. So what am I telling you? If you eat whole grains, you eat what? Dietary fibers. It prevents you from what? Having what? Cardiovascular diseases, obesity, and type 2 what? Diabetic. Okay, so now we're going to talk about what? The different type of what? Carbohydrate. Yes. So we have what we call what? Simple carbohydrate, right? Like glucose or sugar, right? Simple sugar or glucose or carbohydrate, right? These are all what? Carbohydrate. So let's take a look at it, right? So we have what we call what? Fructose, right? So fructose, sucrose, and what? Lactose, right? So fructose naturally is a fruit sugar, right? That's why they call it fructose, right? It's a fruit sugar. It comes naturally. You have to avoid though. You have to avoid high fructose corn syrup because most of this high fructose corn syrup has been processed. Most of this high fructose corn syrup have been processed. What that means, it can add towards your added sugar. Yes, we're going to talk about what? The recommended daily intake when it comes to added sugar. But remember one thing. Yes, although fructose comes in the natural form called what? Fruit sugar, you also have to remember it contributes towards what? Your added sugar, which you are encouraged to eat certain amounts, which we're going to talk about. But remember that, keep that point in your mind. The next one is what? Sucrose, which is what? Table what? Sugar. Sucrose is actually an artificial sugar. Yes, it's been processed from what? It's supposed to say cane, right? Cane sugar, sugar cane. There's a typo there. It's supposed to say what? Sugar cane and what? Sugar beet, right? So the process from what? Sugar cane and sugar beet. Yes, the natural ingredient to make what? Sucrose is what? It comes from what? Natural source. But they process it. So that's what make it what? Artificial sugar. The refining process, what do you think through the process when they process sucrose? They remove all what? All the benefits, nutrients such as what? Minerals and vitamins, right? So usually if you just look at sugar cane and what? Sugar beet, it has minerals and it has other nutrients in it. But when they process it and at the end of the day they give you what we call what? Sucrose or table sugar, they have removed every single benefit from what? From those sugar cane and those sugar beet. Why will you want to eat something that don't have any what? Nutritional benefit to you? I will highly encourage you to limit the amount of what you eat or don't eat it at all. But again, that's all your choice. But I'm just what here to encourage you and educate you. So let's go. The next one is lactose. That's milk sugar. It also comes natural, right? Milk sugar comes what? Natural. Okay, so complex carbohydrates, as I was telling you earlier on, so complex carbohydrate needs to be broken down to what? Simple carbohydrate. Example, glucose is going to be absorbed into what? So vegetables, greens, right? Dry beans, wheat, all these at the end of the day when we consume them, they're going to be broken down to their what? To their simplest form such as what? Glucose. And that glucose is going to be absorbed from our small intestine into our bloodstream. And eventually it will make it into the cell and the cell will use it to make what? ATP, which is required, right? It's required for our cells to be able to perform what? Its biological what? Functions. And if you have any questions, you can always put it on the what? On the comment section. Just type in the questions. I will go there and answer your question. Type in the questions in the comment section. Okay, so type of carbohydrate fibers. Yes, most people don't really realize this, right? So fibers are very important for us. Most Americans, more than 50% of Americans, they do not meet their daily recommended fiber intake. So what are fibers? Fibers, remember, fibers are very important to reduce our risk of what? Cardiovascular disease. Will you not eat something that will reduce your risk of what? Cardiovascular diseases? Because you have to remember, in the United States, the most common, the number one cause of death, the number one cause of death in the United States is what? Cardiovascular diseases. So I'm telling you to say, I'm encouraging you. Studies have shown to say, if you eat fibers, guess what? You reduce your risks from what? Dying from what? Cardiovascular diseases. You reduce your risks. Dr. C said, what are the type of fibers that I can eat that will be very healthy for me? Which food that I can eat that will be very healthy for me when it comes to fibers? you can have the answer right on your phone. If you go to your phone and you Google it, right, I will best assure you, you will have a lot of options that you can pick from, right? So what are the daily recommended intake for fiber? For male, supposed to be what? 38 gram of what? Fiber intake for day, and female is 25. And these days, they actually even do also have what? Fiber pills. Let's say you are someone that, okay, maybe I don't eat as much fruit, I don't eat as much vegetables to meet my what? My fiber intake. Let's say you can take it in the form of a pill. If you go to like CVS, you go to Rite Aid, you go to these places, what do you think happened there? You can go there and get what? Your daily fiber pills, just so you can meet your daily suggested requirements to reduce your risk of what? Having what? Cardiovascular diseases. Sugars and starch increase your blood glucose. Oh, that's another thing. Fibers do not increase your blood glucose. So simply mean, yes, although fibers are our carbohydrate, but they don't increase, they don't spike up your what? Your blood glucose. But sugars and starches like rice, like pasta, right? All this, when you eat it, they're going to increase what? Your blood glucose. So that's why most of the time they suggest to you to say you really have to choose and pay attention to amount of sugar and starchy food that you eat, because it will increase your blood glucose, and that can put you at risk of having what? Type 2 diabetes, right? So you have to be careful with that. But fibers, they do not increase. You can eat as much fiber as you want. They don't really increase what? Your blood glucose. But even if you're worried about what? Eating too much when it comes to fiber, I would encourage you to at least try to eat enough to try to reach that daily recommendation, which is what? 38 gram for what? Male, and 25 gram for what? For female. Okay, so simple sugar. The reason why sometimes some people will tell you to say you have to be careful with simple sugars, right? Is that they absorb quickly, because they absorb quickly into your bloodstream. Let me give you an example. So let's say if I go ahead and consume what? A simple sugar right now. It might take what? 2 minutes, not 2 minutes, maybe it might take like few minutes or the most an hour to get absorbed into my bloodstream. It gets into my bloodstream very quickly. It makes sense, because if you already come in its simplest form, your body, your digestive tract doesn't have to take that extra time to break it down to its simplest form before it get absorbed. But the problem is, most of the food or the sugar in like fast food, they are simple sugar. That why most of the time they can be cause really big problem for you. Because guess what? The moment you consume it, they can spike up your blood sugar very quickly, which can be really, really bad for you and cause like type 2 diabetics or diabetes, right? It can cause that because what? The digestive tract doesn't have to do nothing to that simple, doesn't have to do much to that simple sugar, because what? It's already come in its simplest form. But complex sugar, why most of the time they tell you to say you consume like whole grains, you consume what? Food that are like complex food that have like fibers and stuff like that. Because the reason why they don't immediately or rapidly increase while your blood glucose level is because your digestive tract take time to what? To break it down. So it will take time. So before that sugar will really contribute towards what? Your blood glucose, it will take time, because your body, your digestive tract have to what? Break it down first, right? All the way to its simplest form before it get absorbed. But simple sugar that you find mostly in fast food, they already come in their simplest form. What do you think? The moment you consume it, it's going to show up in your what? In your bloodstream very rapidly. Avoid processed carbohydrate. I don't know any other way to encourage you, but I will highly encourage you to say avoid what? Processed carbohydrate. Carbohydrate themselves are not bad for you. But again, processed carbohydrate, which we found mostly on what? Fast food. They are really, really bad for you. I will encourage you, avoid them as much as you can, right? Try to eat whole grains. Like try to eat like fresh vegetables. Try to eat like broccoli. All these food that I've just mentioned, they do have carbohydrate for you. But these are healthy carbohydrate. That should be your main focus and your main goal. Yes, to be honest with you, this might take time. This might take time because most people, especially here in America, what do you think have happened? For years in, years out, they have used to eating what? All these fast food carbohydrate. So for them just to switch from what? Eating all this fast food and bad carbohydrate into eating healthy one, it will take you time. But I want you to start that what? Process right now of what? Switching from what? Eating carbohydrate that are bad for you, processed carbohydrate into what? Eating what? Healthy carbohydrate. Because you're going to see what? A whole lot of what? Health benefit doing that. Okay, looking at this picture, as I was telling you earlier on, most people don't really realize it. If you eat broccoli, broccoli does have what? Carbohydrate on it. All this food here you look at, these are complex what? Carbohydrate. But look at this, like if you drink like a soda, a can of soda, right? Bread, especially all these are processed food. If you look on my what? On the simple sugar. Simple sugar, the problem is the moment you consume this, is they're going to increase your blood glucose or spike up your blood glucose very rapidly. And that puts you at a risk of having what? A whole bunch of what? Problem health wise. But complex carbohydrate, they are healthy for you because what? Your body will take its time to break it down all the way to what? To their simplest form before it get absorbed. So they don't spike or rapidly increase your blood glucose too quickly. And also for complex carbohydrate, you have to remember also they haven't removed all those nutrients and other what minerals and vitamins from them because they have not been processed. But look at all these simple carbohydrates, this fast food, all of these have been processed. So simply mean processed food or fast food. Most of them means to say they have actually removed what? All those beneficial nutrients from them. They have removed them. And your goal in life is to what? Eat food that have what? Nutrient. Because we know to say as much nutrients as they can have. Because not remove them. Because we know to say nutrients are essential because your body needs them to do what? To perform what? Their biological function. Okay, let's keep moving. What carbohydrates should I be eating? Yes, so the question is, as I was saying earlier on, now the question we have to ask ourselves, Dr. Cisse, Dr. Cisse, which type of carbohydrates should I be eating? Remember what I said, bad carbohydrates are bad for you, but carbohydrates themselves are healthy for us because guess what? They provide us the energy our cells needed to perform what? Biological functions. They prevent us from having what? Diseases such as what? They reduce our risk of having what? Cardiovascular diseases. They reduce our risk of what? Being obese. They reduce our risk of having what? Type 2 diabetes. But Dr. Cisse, which carbohydrates should I be eating? Eat carbohydrate what? That are rich in what? Fiber, right? Fiber rich fruits and vegetables, like whole fresh fruits and vegetables, right? Whole grains. Avoid refined grains. Refined grains just simply mean they have went ahead and removed all of what? The nutrients that grain have. They removed it. Which one will you rather have? A grain that have what? A whole bunch of other nutrients, or a grain that what? They have removed all of the nutrient from it. I hope you choose wisely. Avoid what? Low fat dairy products. Avoid not avoid, eat what? Eat low fatty dairy product. So I want you to encourage you. If you're going to eat dairy product, eat those that have what? Low fat. And these days, if you look at the nutritional fact label, and which I'm going to do a video on that, they will tell you the percentage of what fat the products have. And I want you, even let's say you don't, how Dr. C say, how will I know if this one have a low fat, this is a low fat dairy product? How will I know? Look it up. You have a smartphone. Look it up. But pay attention. When you look up these things I've been telling you on your cell phone, I really want you to avoid looking at .com website. Go to what? Website that have what? .edu, .org. Because .edu simply mean what? Most of the information you get from what? From this website, you can rely on them. I mean, I will highly encourage you. The one that I love to use is Harvard. You know, if you Google, you can say carbohydrate and you go Harvard, right? So Harvard University is one of those leading university when it comes to what? Health and eating. Use their resources. So educate yourself and apply this knowledge and new information you have gained into your daily diet. Eat more legumes, such as what? Beans, peas, and all this. Low, they are very low in what? Bad fats and high in good fats and fiber. They high in folate, which is why vitamin B9, potassium, iron, and magnesium. So they have so much benefit, and I will highly encourage you to eat them. But you have to also be careful here because like beans, peas, and lentils, sometimes some of them have been processed. Avoid the processed ones. I want you to really go and buy the what? The fresh ones and cook them yourself. Because most of the time, the processed one they put like in the can and stuff, sometimes guess what? They have add too much addictive things in it that make it very bad. Example, salt. Sometimes they put too much sugar in it. So I would highly encourage you, buy what? Buy the fresh one and cook it yourself. What carbs should I be eating? Continue, right? Limit added sugar. Yes. Remember what I said earlier on. High fructose syrup add to us added sugar. Added sugar have no health benefit. Yes, added sugar have no health benefit to you. None. Added sugar are not natural. Simply mean what? They add them during what? When they processing the food, they add it. It doesn't come natural. They encouraging you to say what? Consume what? Less amount of it. Simply mean 6 teaspoons, which is what? 25 grams of for women, and 9 teaspoons, which is 36 grams for what? For men, per day. So your daily intake of added sugar should not exceed, even though they don't have any health benefit for you, we're suggesting to say, if you make that decision to consume what? Added sugar, for female, don't consume more than what? 6 teaspoons. For male, don't consume more than what? 9 teaspoons. Let me give you a comparison. If you go and drink any can, regular can of soda out there, I want you, yes, I'm encouraging you to look at the back of what? That can of soda. Most can of soda, the regular one, have what? Minimum 36 grams of what? Sugar. So simply mean if you consume 2 of that, you already exceed what? For male, you already exceed what? Your daily limit for the day. For female, if you consume 1, you already exceed your daily intake. If you consume 1 bagel, most bagel, 1 bagel. I'm not going to name the name where you usually get it, but in America here, there's a very common place. It starts with it has D and D on it. There's a very common place where people go and get what? Their bagel. One bagel have the regular one, not even the flavor ones. Minimum, they have about 8 to 1, 11 gram of what? Added sugar. So if you eat 2 bagels in the morning and you drink probably what? One of those drink in there, you already exceed your daily limit for the day and you haven't really even start your day yet. That's the reason why we see cardiovascular diseases increasing in our society, or the most common cause of death here in the United States. That's the reason why we're seeing the rise in what? In type 2 diabetes. Even when it comes to those juice, sometimes if you go to what? The supermarket, you buy those juice. 1 serving, if you look at the back again, look where it said added sugar. 1 serving might exceed what? 25, 36 grams of sugar. So if you drink 2 cups of what? Orange juice, you already exceed your daily limit. Simply mean you are putting yourself at risk of developing what? Type 2 diabetes. You don't want to do that to yourself. I don't want that for you, right? But again, you also have to have that mindset to say, I don't want this for myself either. I'm providing you the knowledge. My hope for you and each and every one of you, it will take time. Yes, I understand. Trust me, I do. But I want you to try. Yes, try. Try to cut down on your what? On your sugar. If you used to drink 2 cans of what? Regular soda, I want you to cut it down into 1. Cut it down into half, and eventually what? Try to eliminate it because it's not good for you. The same thing with what? Orange juice. Any product that have high amount of what? Sugar, because sometimes they don't only comes in what? In drinks. For example, most of the burgers that most people like consume, they don't know they add sugar on it. Yes. If you go and consume like a regular cheeseburger, a regular cheeseburger out there, they add sugar, and most of them have 6 grams to what? To 13 grams of sugar added on it. So you might be consuming a burger, but you don't really realize to say that they have went ahead through the process of making that burger. They have went ahead and add what? Added sugar that don't have no what? No health benefits to you, and increase your risk of having what? Cardiovascular diseases and what? Type 2 diabetes. Remember, if you have any question, you can always ask that question in the what? In the comment section. So sweeteners, this is another topic that is very interesting. Most people will be like, oh, Dr. Cisse, are sweeteners bad for us or sweeteners good for us? Let me say this. If you can avoid sweeteners, I would say avoid them as much as you can. But this, for educational purposes, I'm going to go over them. There is something called nutritive sweeteners and what? Non-nutritive sweeteners. Nutritive sweeteners just simply mean what? They have calorie values on them. Non-nutritive sweeteners means what? They don't have no calorie values on them. Dr. Cisse, what does that mean? The word nutrition, nutritive, right? It means to say it has calorie values on it. So simply mean it contributes to your calorie intake. Non-nutritive means what? It doesn't have what? Any calorie what? Value on it. Simply means it will not add to your daily what? Calorie intake. But most people don't take their time. Like if they go to this popular what coffee shop or drink shops, they don't really take their time. They will just say, oh, can I, they will spread them out. They have these sweeteners out there, you see them. They don't really pay attention to or look it up to see which one that can add what calorie value to their daily intake, which one does not. Okay, so sweeteners, they are added sugar substitutes. So what most food manufacturers have done, they know to say the population is becoming, or society is becoming very aware when it comes to what? Sugar, added sugar to be specific. They, they know that society is becoming more aware of what? The health complication of what? Or complications of what? Added sugar. So what they're doing these days, they're trying to use sweeteners as an alternative. Many sugar substitutes in the what? Food industry, they use what we call artificial sweeteners. It's one of them. That's true. Most sugar-free food products contain sugar substitutes, such as what artificial sweeteners. Yes, they will tell you to say sugar-free, but they do have this sugar substitute called what? Artificial what? Sweeteners. That's one of them. Does sugar-free really mean what? Calorie-free? That's the question. Not necessarily. So that's why I was saying earlier on, I would highly encourage you to avoid sweeteners as much as you can. But if you're going to decide to say, oh, I want to avoid the added sugar, so I want to use like a sweetener just to help me with the taste, look it up. Look it up and see if that sweetener that you're about to consume, if it had calorie value to it or it does not. And from there, you can make the decision, because only you can make that decision. This is what I was saying earlier on. So there's something called nutritive versus non-nutritive sweeteners versus what we call also call alternative what sweeteners. So nutritive sweeteners have calories on it. So simply mean they add towards what? Your calorie intake per day. Simply mean you can gain weight if you eat too much of what? Nutritive sweeteners, because they add towards what? Your calorie what? Daily intake. Alternative doesn't mean to say they don't have calories in them. It just means to say they have fewer calories compared to what? The nutritive sweeteners. Non-nutritive sweeteners simply mean they have little or to no calories, right? That's what it means. So most people will be like, oh, sweeteners are better for me to, because I'm trying to lose weight, so I'm just going to consume more sweeteners. But you have to be careful which type of sweeteners that are you using. If you use like nutritive sweeteners, it's not going to help you much. If you use alternative sweetener, it will help you a little bit because it has what? Fewer calories. But if you use non-nutritive sweeteners, most of the time they have little to what? No calories. That will actually help you in your goal in terms of what? Losing weight or being in a healthy weight. Okay, so here, natural versus what? Artificial sweeteners. Let me see if I can make this PowerPoint bigger. No, I can't. So natural sweeteners. So from what? Natural sources, but still processed. So sometimes you will see they say, oh, this is a natural sweetener. All they're trying to tell you here, they're trying to uh, mislead you, right? Although yes, the source at which they get the natural sweetness itself is natural, but that doesn't necessarily mean it has not been processed. For example, honey. Most people will be like, oh, honey is a natural sugar, so it's good for you. That's true, but you still have to avoid consuming excessive amounts of what? Honey, because most of them, they have been processed. Artificial sweeteners, where artificial as the name go, it means to say they don't use no natural sauce, right? Natural sweeteners, although yes, has been processed, most of them have been processed like honey, but at least the natural ingredients come from what? A natural source. But artificial sweeteners means to say they literally what? A synthetic sugar. They make this sugar. It doesn't come in natural form. Simply mean they didn't get the ingredients for these artificial sweeteners from a natural source. For example, most of the soft drinks, most of the baked goods, candy, canned food. That's what I was saying. You have to avoid these things because most of the sugar they add in it or the sweeteners they add in them, they are all what? Artificial. Simply mean they are synthetic sugars. They don't come what? Natural. But remember, as I said, even though they call the other one, they call them what? Natural sweeteners, but you still have to be careful because they still process them. Okay, so artificial sweeteners. Artificial sweeteners can help with what? With control. The reason why they say artificial sweeteners can help with weight control because some of them have what? Fewer or no calories. Right? Artificial sweeteners what? Sometimes some of them can help you with what? Because remember we went through the sweeteners. Some of them have what? Have especially when it comes, let's go back 2 slides up. Let me go back if I can. It will not let me here. But if you go back to when we talk about the sweetener, different type of sweeteners, some of them don't have no they have fewer or no calories on them. So they can help you. Yes, they can help you. That's one of their benefits. They can help you to what? If they don't have no calorie values on them, they have little calories, they can help you when it comes to what? Weight control. There's a misconception out there to say that they do cause what? Teeth decay and cavity. That's not true. It's not true. Artificial sweeteners do not cause what? Tooth decays or what? Cavities. They are not carbohydrate, will not increase. Yes, artificial what? Sweeteners, they're not carbohydrates, so simply mean they will not increase your blood sugar. Simply mean they will not contribute to you developing what? Type 2 diabetes. That's what it means. Cancer alert. There are studies that are suggesting to say, although artificial sweeteners help when it comes to what? Weight control, they don't cause what? Because they have fewer calories or no calories, they don't cause no tooth decay or cavities, and they are not carbohydrates. Simply mean they don't really increase your blood sugar. They don't contribute towards your contributing towards you developing diabetes. But what we're saying here, there are studies that have shown to say what? They might put you at risk of developing what? Cancer. So that way I highly encourage you. At the same time, you have to be careful with that. Okay, alcohol sugar. This is another sugar that most of the time I always tell people to be careful with and also be educated about. Because sometimes like sorbitol, most people will see if you read the ingredients, you will see they say sorbitol. Any any ingredient that end up with OL, most of them most likely is what? Is sugar alcohol, right? Is sugar alcohol. They does have calories. Yes, sugar alcohol do have calories. Yes, they have lesser calories compared to what? Table sugar, but that doesn't necessarily mean to say they will not contribute towards what? Your obviously if you have to choose between table sugar and sugar alcohol, I would encourage you to choose sugar alcohol because sugar alcohol has what? Fewer calories, but also you have to consume less of it because if you consume more of what? Sugar alcohol, at the end of the day you defeat the purpose, right? Because the purpose is to reduce what? Your calorie intake, right? So that way you can prevent you from gaining excessive amounts of weight or if you're trying to lose weight. So at the end of the day, if you avoid table sugar which have high calorie content and you eat alcohol sugar, but you consume high alcohol sugar, then you're not helping yourself, right? You're not helping yourself. But they do, yes, they do have what? Less calorie content compared to what? Table sugar. Sugar, alcohol are carbohydrate, yes. So sugar, alcohol, they are carbohydrates. Simply mean what? They can increase your blood sugar. So you have to limit the amount that you eat or avoid them at all. Avoid them if you can. But it's very difficult. For example, most of the gum that you consume, Like, you know, those protein bars, if you look at the back of it, they will tell you what sugar alcohol. How will you know it's what sugar alcohol? Most of the time they will tell you, or you will see at the end of, if you look under carbohydrate and you look like it says zero added sugar sometime, but if you look at the bottom, you will see where it says. And I really want you, the reason why sometimes I don't put that information here on these lectures, because I really want you to participate in this. I want you to participate what? The little knowledge that you have gained from this lesson, I want you to implement it and take that active role and actually look it up. So anytime, next time you pick up like the protein bar or even the gum, try to look if it has sugar alcohol or not. Right? Try to look at the back of it, right? Most of the time it will tell you. And if you have any question in regards to that, just put it on the comment section. Okay, the danger of low carb and high protein diet. Carbohydrates is the main source of the human body energy. Remember what I told you. We need carbohydrate because carbohydrates are what? When we consume carbohydrate, we break them down to their simplest form, and one of them is glucose, and our body going to use that glucose to make ATP, which is what? The energy currency of what? Of our body, right? So which is the energy currency of our body. But most people don't know the danger of what? Low carb and what? High protein diet. For example, there is a whole lot of going on out there to say what? Ketones, 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 or ketone diet. You have to be careful avoiding what? Carbohydrates, or reducing carbohydrates excessively in your diet, right? So I'm not saying you should be eating too much what? Carbohydrate. That's not what I'm saying. You need to eat adequate amount of what? Carbohydrate. But what you should avoid to do is to reduce below normal when it comes to what? Carbohydrate. Because obviously it's very different for each and every one of us, right? So my carbohydrate intake that is normal for me would be different for you. So I'm saying eat adequate amounts, right? Don't go to the extreme and lower excessively your carbohydrate intake, because that can be a big problem for you, right? Low carbohydrate diet means the body must find other source of energy, especially the brain. Yes, that's true. So if you reduce your carbohydrate, because remember, the brain, especially the brain, needs what? It needs constant sources of what? Glucose. Constant supply of glucose. Because it needs that glucose to what? To make ATP and to keep those brain cells what? Working. So if you lower your carbohydrate intake too low, what do you think happened? Now the brain have to find other means to what? To have energy, to make energy, right? So that's when we end up going to what we call ketones. So what are ketones? What are really ketones? Ketone bodies are bad news. That's true, right? Ketone bodies are bad news. That's a whole different chapter. That's a whole different what? Discussion. But one thing I want you to take home here. Most of the time, if your carbohydrate intake is very low, your body going to use what? Fat. To what? And that's how people lose weight. And they end up saying, oh yes, now this is so good for me. No, it's not good for you. Because what's going to end up happening, you're going to have high level of what? Ketones in your body. If you reduce what? Your carbohydrate intake, you're going to end up creating, your body going to use fat, break it down to make what? Energy. But by doing so, it also what? Increase what? Your ketone bodies, which is what? Bad news for you. There is a like that why starvation is the same thing. Because anytime you don't provide your body the glucose it needs to make that ATP, it has to find other source in the body to make to make energy. And that's why starvation, most people that are trying to lose weight, they starve themselves. I always tell them you have to be careful. Be careful of doing that, right? Even fasting. Yes, I understand sometimes there are religious reasons why people fast, and which is okay to a certain extent, right? But sometimes people try to starve themselves. They don't eat at all because they're trying to lose weight, right? I always tell your main focus should be what? Trying to eat healthy, because the more you try to eat healthy, yes, it might take you longer time, but eventually you will see the results that you want in a healthy way. And that's the goal. The whole goal of what? Losing weight. It's not just to lose the weight, but you want to lose the weight in a healthy way. And if you go on low carb diet, you put yourself in danger of what? Creating a whole bunch of what? Ketone bodies that are really bad for you. Sometimes people go on high protein diets. High protein diets, such as what? Ketone diets. Ketone diets are bad for you. I will highly encourage each and every one of you to read an article by what? By Harvard University. Just Google it. Say keto diet, Harvard University. Educate yourself. That's the whole goal of this YouTube channel, is to what? Give you that medical education to inspire you to what? To go and read more, because I can't give you all of the information here. The purpose of this channel is to inspire you enough to give you a little bit of knowledge that you can what? Use and what? And as a starting point to keep educating yourself by using what? Other resources such as what? Harvard University and Columbia and all what? These great what? Universities and resources what? Centers, right? High blood ketone bodies can lead to death. That's true, right? That's true. So avoid low carb diet. My encouragement to you is to eat healthy carbohydrates as already discussed. Avoid high protein diets, such as what? Ketone diets. These are bad for you. They increase your ketone bodies and that can cause death. Okay, healthy carb versus what? Unhealthy carbs. Carbs are not bad for us. I don't know how to say this no more, but if you don't remember anything from this lecture today, it's one thing I really want you to understand. Carbs are not bad for us, but bad carbs are bad for us. If you eat healthy carbs, your body going to use those healthy carbs to do what? Not only to provide your body the necessary energy it needs to keep you alive, but also prevent you from having what? Diseases such as what? Obesity, such as what? Type 2 diabetes, such as what? Cardiovascular diseases. Your choice. Okay, do not avoid carbohydrates. Yes, I will highly encourage you, do not avoid carbohydrate. Because remember what I said, if you avoid carbohydrate, what do you think going to happen? Your body going to find other what? Sources to make what? To generate energy. And one of those sources is what? Is fat. It's going to break down fat, and but by breaking fat, you're going to end up accumulating excessive amounts of what? Ketone bodies, which are bad news, and that can even lead to what? Death. Eat more healthy and complex carbs, because they are what? They are very important for normal body functions. Okay, good carbs are very important. This is the take home. So the take home today is carbohydrates are not bad for you. Good carbohydrates are what? Vital and healthy for normal body functions. They reduce our risk of what? Cardiovascular diseases. They decrease your risk of type 2 diabetic and obesity. The main source of energy for cellular what? Function. Yes, every single cells in your body require energy. And what? Carbohydrates are one of the main ingredients the body uses to make what? ATP, because carbohydrates is broken down to a simplest form called what? Glucose. And your body will what? Your body, your cells will use that glucose to make ATP, so that way it can do what? Perform its what? Biological functions. Thank you. Thank you. I really want to thank each and every one of you. And I really also want to encourage each and every one of you, use this little information that you have learned here today. Look it up yourself, but use reliable what? Resources, especially like Harvard and other what? Resources. Avoid.com, use.edu.org resources, right? Use them because most of the time they have reliable what? Information. Carbohydrates are vital for optimum, for our body to be able to work at its what? Optimum. Bad carbohydrates are bad for us. Thank you very much for each and every one of you for what? For taking your time to listen to this lecture. But most importantly, I want you to really absorb this information and apply them. Share this information because at the end of the day, we are all part of this great America. We are all part of what? This community. So at the end of the day, we need to what? Help each other. Help each other in regards to what? Our health, so that way we can live what? Happy life and be what? Happy people. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Have a great day.